Today, we are flipping the conversation. Because while this series has largely focused on how women are affected by manipulation and exploitation in relationships, the truth is that the dynamic can run in both directions. There are women who take advantage of men financially in relationships, and that is a real pattern that causes real harm and deserves honest discussion. Not to balance a scoreboard, not to minimize anything we have already talked about, but because this topic matters on its own, and because understanding it helps everyone make clearer, more self-aware choices. Let's start with what financial exploitation in a relationship actually looks like from a man's perspective, because it is not always as obvious as it might seem from the outside. It does not always begin with someone showing up and immediately asking for money. Often it starts gently, gradually, in ways that feel completely natural inside the context of a developing relationship. He pays for dinner, of course, that is normal. He helps with a small, unexpected expense. That is what caring partners do. He covers something she is temporarily short on. It happens, no judgment. But the pattern builds. The requests become more frequent. The amounts become larger. And the relationship itself becomes the context within which financial extraction happens, because the emotional bond makes it very hard to say no, and because saying no feels like a failure of love or trust or partnership. The specific vulnerability that makes men targets for this kind of exploitation varies. Some men are targeted because they are older and financially established. They have savings, property, or a stable income that makes them attractive not as a person, but as a resource. Some are targeted because they are lonely or socially isolated, which makes the warmth of a relationship so valuable to them that they are willing to pay for it in literal terms without fully acknowledging that is what is happening. Some are targeted because they are generous by nature and have not yet learned that generosity without boundaries is something certain people will take full advantage of. There is also a specific dynamic worth naming, where a man who is already feeling some version of pressure or inadequacy about his position in life becomes vulnerable to a relationship that makes him feel needed and valued. A woman who is skilled at making a man feel like the most important, capable, desirable person in the room, and who then follows that warmth with requests for financial help, is running a version of the same emotional manipulation we have discussed in other contexts. The emotional investment is manufactured or exaggerated. The warmth is strategically deployed. And the man, who is genuinely feeling something real, makes financial decisions based on an emotional reality that has been constructed specifically to encourage those decisions. What does this look like in practice? It can look like a woman who describes financial difficulties that are always just slightly beyond what she can handle alone, and who turns to the man in her life as the natural solution. It can look like someone who positions herself as needing to be taken care of, and who rewards that caretaking with affection and attention in a way that creates a transactional pattern, even if nobody is calling it that out loud. It can look like someone who is present and warm when financial help is given, and noticeably cooler or more distant when it is not, training the man, in effect, to associate generosity with her affection. It can also look like a longer-term arrangement where a woman accepts financial support from a man while maintaining deliberate ambiguity about the nature of the relationship, letting him believe it is moving towards something committed and exclusive while not actually delivering on that, or while simultaneously maintaining other arrangements he does not know about. This is a particularly cruel form because it exploits not just his money but his genuine emotional investment and his hope for a future that she has no real intention of building. What makes this hard for men to recognize and address? Several things. First, social expectations around men and money create a context where a man paying for things is normalized and even expected. It can be genuinely difficult to tell the difference between a cultural norm and a pattern of exploitation, especially in the early stages. Second, emotional attachment clouds judgment in exactly the same way it does for anyone. The feelings are real, the connection feels real, and the brain does not want to examine something that feels good too closely. Third, for men who already struggle with loneliness or self-worth, the relationship itself has become so valuable that acknowledging what might be happening would require risking something they do not feel they can afford to lose. The warning signs are worth knowing. If someone's interest in you seems to warm noticeably when money is involved and cool when it is not, that is worth noticing. If financial requests come early and regularly before real trust and genuine mutual investment have been established, that is worth pausing on. If you feel that maintaining the warmth in the relationship requires a consistent financial contribution from you, and that this contribution is rarely reciprocated in any form, that is worth being honest with yourself about. Healthy relationships involve mutual investment, emotional, practical, and yes, sometimes financial. But the investment flows in both directions, even if not always in exactly equal measures at exactly the same time. Protecting yourself from this pattern is not about becoming suspicious of everyone or refusing to be generous. Generosity is a good quality. The issue is when generosity becomes the condition under which affection is available. That is not a relationship. That is an arrangement.
And you deserve to know which one you are actually in.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe for Japanese and Korean language learning content, fun ESL class stories, sometimes even the toxic ones, plus videos about pets, plants, and anything interesting I discover in my daily life.